Alright, on the second day of getting everything done, finding two solutions, we have had the opportunity to learn the two processes used to solve systems using algebra. We've stopped to discuss the types of equations that work in each process, but before we go on, let's do an activity real quick to be sure that we understand when to use each one. Remember that substitution works whenever one equation is written with x equals or y equals, and when you see the x equals or the y equals, that is your indication to use the box and switch method, which, as people like to say, they don't like to put the boxes, but as long as you understand the idea, that's really all that matters. Also remember that elimination works whenever the variables are lined up along the equal sign. So substitution works whenever you have x equals y equals. Elimination works whenever you've got x over x, y over y, equals over equals, and the number all by itself. So real quick, look at the following systems and put an S if you think you should use substitution and an E if you think you should use elimination. I will pause the video now and give you a chance to do that, but other than that, go ahead and look at these 6 equations and then we will discuss them in just a second. So looking at this, A, I don't see a x equals or a y equals. I don't see x all by itself or y all by itself, so it's definitely not substitution. It means we have to use elimination. Again, notice that x's are lined up, y's are lined up, equals lined up, numbers are lined up. That should be elimination. Your second video, once I see that a variable is all by itself, I think substitution. Really what I do here is I look for substitution first, and then if substitution is not an option, then I know I have to use elimination. So for example, on C, when I read this, as soon as I see the x all by itself and I see x equals, that means that also has to be substitution. Looking at letter D, here I look at it, I see that there's an x all by itself here, so this has to be substitution. Again, once you see that letter all by itself, it would set up the way that you normally would, where you're going to put 3y in there, or 4x plus 3 right there, or 5y minus 3 right there. Looking at E, I don't see a x equals, I don't see a y equals, so it's definitely not substitution. This one has to be elimination. Again, notice your x's are lined up, y's lined up, equals lined up, and constants lined up. And then the last thing, again, I don't see a x or equals or y equals, so this also has to be elimination. Notice x's are lined up, y's, equals, and numbers, everything lined up. So in that case, I would get rid of one variable and find the other one. So now that we've had a chance to discuss when to use each one, it's time to make sure we practice applying what we learned over the past 2 weeks. So let's solve the following systems together, just using the best method. Again, write these down for your notes because you are going to be doing this in a little bit on your own. So looking at A, the first thing again I look at is there a variable all by itself. I see this x all by itself with x equals, so I put a box around the x, a box around the 2y plus minus 7, and a box around the other x. I then take this and substitute, so 3 parentheses 2y minus 7 equals 19. We then take and distribute this 3, so we get 6y minus 21 equals 19. From there it should be easy. We take and add our 21 to both sides. 6y equals us, what's that, 30? 40? Did I mess that up? Let's see. 3 times 2y minus 7, 2y, that's right. Oh, I forgot my 2y. That's what it is. So anyway, it'd be 3 parentheses 2y minus 7 plus 2y equals 19. That's where I messed up. And then, forgetting that, you get 6y minus 21 plus 2y equals 19. Sorry about that. Put your y's together, you get 8y minus 21 equals 19, which now, when you work that out, it should work just fine. I didn't like the fact that I had 40 and 6, but now I have 40 and 8. And when I divide by 8, I end up with y equals 5. Again, now that we've learned both of them as of yesterday, we don't stop right here. What we do now is we take one of our originals and we rewrite it and we plug that new number in. So x equals 2y minus 7 is my original equation. 2 times 5 minus 7, which becomes 10 minus 7, or 3. And again, our final answer needs to be as an ordered pair. X goes first, y goes second. That would be our answer. And what you can do real fast is you can say 3 times 3 is 9, 2 times 5 is 10, 9 plus 10 does make 19, so I know that it worked. Sorry about that mistake, but it's good that we can catch those things along the way to make sure everything's working. What happened was I knew that it was going to be a decimal, so I knew I'd messed up somewhere. But again, the bottom line is your substitution happens once you recognize that there is a variable all by itself. Looking at example B, I do not see an x by itself, I do not see a y by itself, so I have to use elimination. I noticed that these x's, there's a 5 down here and nothing up there, so I'm going to multiply everything up top by 5. This turns into 5x and 20y equals 115, and then 5x minus 2y equals 5. Remember again, typically what happens after we make our x's match is we sometimes have to switch, so we switch all three signs. Putting this together, we get 22y equals 110, which we then divide by 22 and get the answer of 5. Again, that's our first answer. Now we have to find the second, and so we go back and rewrite one of our equations. Again, I usually write the first one over again. There's my first equation. Take the 5 now and put it in for y, because that's what this is saying, is that y is 5. So x plus 4 times 5 equals 23. This now turns into x plus 20 equals 23, which I will then subtract the 20 from both sides, get the answer of x is equal to 3, giving me the ordered pair of 3, 5. Now you might notice that that's the same as the first one, but sometimes on my worksheets that's a sign that you're doing it right if you're getting the same answer, because I try to set it up like that. So if you don't get the same answer, you should probably look and see if you did something weird. But other than that, that is the full process with elimination like we did last week, put together with the stuff that we did yesterday, and taking the value that we find and just plugging it back in. C. Again, no x, no y alone, so we've got to now multiply. Bring your 7 up, bring your 2 down. This turns into 14x, 7y, and 77. This turns into 14x minus 6y and 12. Again, my 14s won't go away, so I switch everything there. This cancels, giving me 13y equals 77 minus 12, which is 65. Divide both sides by 13 to find out that y is 5. 65 divided by 13 is 5. You can do that on your calculator. And again, once I get that first answer, rewrite one of your equations. 2x plus y equals 11. This 5 now goes in for y. Remember, since there's nothing attached to that y but a sign, I can just put a 5. Now I will subtract 5 from both sides and divide by 2 to get the answer of x equals 3. And again, as an ordered pair, that is 3, 5. So again, hopefully you're seeing how all this stuff comes together, and this is really where your test is going to be. You won't be stopping early anymore on any of your questions for the rest of the time that we do this, so just keep that in mind. When we look at option D, or question D, I see a y equals, or a y all by itself, so I put a box around it. I put a box around where it's going to go, and I have to be careful because it is negative, so I put 4x minus parentheses 3x minus 4 equals 7. You have to remember that this negative actually switches both of these signs, so it becomes 4x minus 3x and then plus 4 equals 7. This turns into x plus 4 equals 7, because 4 minus 3 is 1. And then when I subtract 4 from both sides, I again get x is equal to 3. Taking this now, putting the 3 back into one of my two equations. Again, I usually just pick the top, put 3 in for there, so it's y is equal to 3 times 3 minus 4. 3 times 3 turns into 9, and 9 minus 4 gives you the answer of 5, which means my ordered pair again is 3, 5. So now that you've got all that done and you've got that idea, just make sure you're asking about any questions that you have over A, B, C, or D if there's anything. Again, your level of expectation is going up every week, every day. And now that we understand how to do substitution, and we know how to do elimination, and we know how to take our first answer and plug it back in to find our second, you are pretty much ready to go. So before we get ready to go, do this lesson credit these two questions and make sure you bring them up to me, and then we will begin work on the worksheet.